What's going on, guys? My name is Ben. How are you guys doing today? And before I move on to this video, I just want to point out the purpose for this video right here. Now, for those of you that might have known or saw the video, I did a few days ago, I did a video and that was reviewing the iPod Touch 5th generation right here. And then when I uploaded it, I felt like I was missing something in that video, especially for a video that's 23 minutes long. And I did, in that video, all I mentioned was the battery life that this thing has, the hardware and the design of the iPod Touch 5th generation, as well as the camera and all that other stuff, and what kind of ways did I do in order to test out the battery life, testing out the camera, how I felt about the device as a whole. But one thing that I was missing in that review when I re-watched it again was that I didn't talk anything about the software. Now, you guys are probably like, dude, it's iOS. We already know what iOS is like because almost everybody used it before. I understand that, but here's the thing. iOS runs differently on each devices. They either go faster, which they do as newer generations of devices goes on, or they run slower, meaning the older devices, alright? And then you kind of get a comparison about how things run between the new device and then the old device. So I do apologize for this, and I'm terribly sorry about this because I must have had a lot to say, and even though this channel I'm able to go over 15 minutes, which is the usual limit if you're not partnered or anything, I felt like that I was just worried about the length of the video because that video was 23 minutes long and all I babbled on about was the specs, wireless specs, the Wi-Fi antenna that this thing has, but I didn't mention anything about the software. So like I said, I do apologize for this and like how apps run on the iPod Touch 5th generation. So what is this video? This is an update of that iPod Touch review, and if you guys haven't seen the first video, go back and check that out. There will be a little annotation right at the lower left hand corner with a view of the video itself. And what's worse was that I felt like I wasted a lot of time right there. Not a lot of time, because it's important to know the specs of a device, but at the last minute I was talking about the loop, and after that I felt like the loop should have been a separate video, because when you're doing a tech review, it don't matter what accessory comes with it. You're reviewing the product itself, and the hardware and design is part of it, but you also have to talk about the software. No matter how long it's been released, how many people are using it all over this world, when this operating system came out, you have to try to integrate the operating system into the device. So as I stated before, I do apologize for this and I'm sorry. So you're going to get that other half of the review in this video right now. So hopefully you guys understand, and for those of you that are looking for how the operating system runs on this iPod Touch 5th generation, I'm terribly sorry. So you're going to get that back in this video right here. But if you guys haven't seen my review yet, make sure you check out the first review that I did and then watch this one after that. So it'll all tie in and make sense. So without further ado, let's get on to the second half of the iPod Touch 5th generation review. So this is currently running iOS 6. It runs iOS 6 directly out of the box. And currently I am running iOS 6.1.2 on here, which is the newest version that is released by Apple. And then we should be expecting iOS 6.1.3 to be released in about a few days, which is basically bug fixes, I'm assuming. And iOS 6, there isn't a lot putting into iOS 6 compared to iOS 4 and compared to iOS 5, because iOS 4 you had multitasking and then background wallpaper, as you see right here, and iOS 5 you got the notification center, which is basically you slide down from the top of the screen, and then you got different notification settings where if you're in the lock screen and you got a notification pop up, you can actually just slide it, and then once you automatically unlock your device, then you'll be opened up into that app automatically, so you don't have to go through the springboard and find your app, which is great. And iOS 6, there wasn't much put into that except for Facebook integration and all kinds of other stuff that I am not sure of or I don't remember. Do Not Disturb was there in iOS 6, and the operating system running on this iPod Touch 5th generation is basically made just to work with people. It's not like Android. You have all this crazy customization to do. No, iOS is plain iOS. You know, this is like a plain operating system. You know, a lot of people say, including myself, that iOS has become stale and there's not much you can do about it, but this is made for people that just want a device that works. Which is why, you know, you see a lot of people with the iPhone, the iPod Touch, and now you see a lot of people with the iPad and now the iPad Mini. So, operating system, iOS, and it's just going to depend on which operating system you prefer. For me, I prefer something where I can actually do a little bit more, but at the same time, I have no problem using this operating system right here. So, how does iOS run on the iPod Touch 5th generation? Well, the iPod Touch 5th generation features the A5 chip, which is the dual-core processor made by Apple, which was put into the iPad 2 and the iPhone 4S, I believe. Yeah, those two devices. Sorry, I'm at a loss here. And so this thing, what people are saying, it pretty much has the iPhone 4S specs, sort of, but with its own bit of a twist. And I'm not sure what the full complete specs of the iPhone 4S is, but all I know is that you do have part of the iPhone 4S specs into the iPod Touch 5th generation, which helps collaborate with the operating system a little bit. So as far as using this device, it's great. You know, it's fast. It launches apps when I need to. In fact, it launches apps. I think this thing handles iOS 6 a lot better than the iPod Touch 4th generation. Now, again, this is expected as newer operating systems come out with newer devices because the iPod Touch 4th generation, so listen to this carefully. The iPod Touch 4th generation was released in 2010. So that was a 4th generation device, a couple months after the iPhone 4 was released. And for some reason, Apple skipped a year on the iPod Touch next generation upgrade. And so the 5th generation wasn't released in 2011. The iPhone 4S was released with the iPad 2 in 2011, and the iPod Touch 5th generation never came out in 2011. And then after that, it went into 2012, where we got the 3rd generation iPad released, and then we had the iPhone 5 released, and then at the end, the 4th generation iPad came out alongside with the iPod Touch 5th generation. So Apple skipped a year for the iPod Touch to be upgraded, which is why we're in the 5th generation right now, and we pretty much have 5th generation specs pretty much, because the iPhone 4S is the 5th iPhone made in history, and this is the 5th iPod Touch made in history of the iPod Touch, which is why, like, if Apple upgraded the iPod Touch last year, maybe keeping the 4th generation design with the A5 chip in there, as well as boost up more specs, then this iPod Touch 5th generation would be having the A6 processor that's in the iPhone 5 right now. And but you know what? The device handles the iOS operating system very well. I mean, when you're opening applications, like I said, it'll launch. I feel like with the iPod Touch 4th generation, iOS 6 isn't running that well on the iPod Touch 4th generation. And the iPhone 4, comparing that to the iPhone 4 running iOS 6 is really good. Not 100% the best, but it runs really good compared to the iPod Touch 4th generation. Because the 4th generation iPod Touch, I felt like there was some lag in there, which of course all devices are going to have lag someday. But I felt like when I was trying to launch apps on the iPod Touch 4th generation, apps would constantly crash, and it was just getting annoying. And whenever, even though I shut down the app running in the background just by using this multitasking bar right here, apps are still crashing on the iPod Touch 4th generation, and I wasn't very fond of that experience at all. As far as the iPod Touch 5th generation is concerned, nothing crashed yet, although I believe this thing only crashed once, but again, all devices are going to crash at one point. And the iPod Touch 4th generation, when you're trying to play a game, if it's like a really heavy game or something, the graphics aren't going to be too great, but it did at one point made it so laggy that I couldn't even play the game, and then graphics were just being choppy. Now the iPod Touch 5th generation graphics for gaming is great. It's just great. But at one point I did notice that the graphics of the iPod Touch 5th generation actually started being choppy a little bit. For instance, I have a game right here, and it's called Flow, and the point of Flow right here is that you're trying to connect the dots, but at the same time you have to use up all the blocks that are here. And when once all the blocks are filled up, then it's 100% perfect, and you have to do it all in one shot with each dot. And I don't know if you noticed, but well, actually it's not doing that right now, but in this game I did notice that this thing was being choppy a little bit whenever I tried to connect the patterns right here. Another thing is that if you're still concerned about apps on the iPod Touch 5th generation, this went from a 3.5-inch display from all the other 4 generations of the iPod Touch to the 5th generation featuring a 4-inch screen. And apps do run great on the 4-inch screen. However, not all of them are compatible, especially since the iPhone 5 was released. Not all the apps are compatible with the 4-inch screen. That's why you still have that 3.5-inch form factor for some of the apps. For instance, the speed test app. This was the app that I used to test out how fast the speeds are on the iPod Touch 5th generation in my other review. And you guys notice right here, you do have some letterboxing at the bottom and the top right here. Alright, so with the letterboxing, that means that it's not compatible with the 4-inch screen. So you're going to get that same 3.5-inch form factor, except when you're viewing it on a 4-inch display, you're going to notice some letterboxing right here, which is not great. But then again, all developers have to do is just update their app, and then when you just push update in the App Store, and then bingo, your app is compatible with the 4-inch display. But at the same time, I don't think all apps are going to be compatible with the 4-inch display, because there are some apps that developers don't even touch. That when the Retina display was first released for the iPhone 4, developers were trying to get the apps to be compatible with the Retina display, but not all of them are compatible with the Retina display, because I noticed that some of the app icons that I have, it's a little blurry, so it's still in that supporting part for the iPhone 3G, 3GS, and the iPhone 1st generation, believe it or not, and not on the Retina display. As far as viewing movies on the iPod Touch 5th generation, if you are viewing HD videos on this thing, it takes up the whole entire screen, which is great. Versus the 3.5-inch form factor, if you try to view a HD video on the 3.5-inch form factor, then you're going to have some letterboxing as well. So in this case, let me go to one of my videos right here, and we'll go to my latest one, which is the daylight saving time thing. And this is using the dedicated YouTube app. As you can see, just by looking at it, it takes up the whole entire screen. So viewing movies is great. Now, I forgot what movies are compatible with this, but just view it whatever way you want it, 1080p or 720p. I mean, it may not be the best quality as what you would get from a big screen TV, but it works, especially for a portable device. So overall, if I had to rate this thing again, including all the things that I said in my first part of the review, in the first part of my review, I said that I gave it a solid 4. This time, like after putting everything back together, I would now give it just a solid 4.5, a 4.5. And the reason why for that is because with all the perks that I said in my first review about the hardware and stuff, like some of the issues I had, not including this loop. Just want you guys to know I did not include this loop this time in my rating. But it's because like the iPod Touch 5th generation runs iOS, so you have to integrate the operating system into the product itself at the same time. We all know Apple makes amazing hardware, but what's the use of it if the operating system is not very cooperative with you? You guys know what I'm saying. I mean, you can do FaceTime on here, record video, which is great, and the why it's missing the other 0.5 is because of some of the graphics issues that it has. But then again, that can't be solved all the time, because as newer updates release, eventually it's gonna go down unless this thing surprises me. But for now, I'm gonna keep the 4.5 the way it is. And one thing that really kills me about iOS was like Game Center. I never use Game Center because I don't really care less for competing with friends. Like I'd rather just play on my own, because when you're competing with friends, then you're going crazy, and I know you guys like that, but for me that's not my kind of style of gaming. And every time I launch a game, it'll just keep asking me to sign into Game Center, and I cannot find a way to turn it off. And you guys know how, leave it down in the comments down below, because I am really getting sick and tired of seeing Game Center popped up. And I'm hoping that Apple, if there's no option right here, I'm hoping that Apple will release a software update. So then again, overall, I don't know what else is wrong with iOS, because I think iOS is a great operating system, and this is a great product running iOS 6. So thank you so much for watching. As I stated, you know, I'm putting the two reviews together into one, and I'm gonna try to, the next product that I review, if it's like a tech product, I'm gonna be sure to include the software in there as well, no matter what the length of the video is. But at the same time, I will still keep that in mind to keep the video shortened, so that way you don't have to view two separate parts like you are seeing right now. So thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this video, go ahead, click that like button down below. Follow me on twitter.com/benicellguy. Same thing, instagram.com/benicellguy. And subscribe for more videos that you guys like these kind of videos. And I'll see you guys in the next one. And take care.